Bob was a missile launch officer at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. He says a UFO hovered over his nuclear missile site and disabled all the missiles.
And so, Carl, here's the $1 million question. Do you believe that a higher form of non-human intelligence has visited this planet?
Right. So non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity. This interaction is not new, and it's been ongoing. And there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that.
Roswell, New Mexico is a quiet city of just 26,000 people. The majority of the population are ranchers or military.
And so, Carl, that is quite a bold statement. I'm wondering, and I'm curious, how confident are you that that is true?
There's zero doubt.
My name is Dale. I want to welcome you to my channel, Observer of Anomalous Objects. I'm really excited because today we're going to talk about the Senate hearing, and there's probably nobody more qualified to talk about the Senate hearing than my friend Matt Laslo. And so we'll bring the man of the hour up right now. So how you doing? I know you're not getting much sleep. I kind of worry about you a little bit there, my friend.
Sleep when I die. Busy time of year here in the swamp with the new administration coming in, and me chasing my old nemesis, Mr. Matty, to the gates. But glad we say goodbye to him. Mm-hmm. I don't get political. Fuck that guy. He's a bad
your
man.
Favorite person, huh? All right.
He always loved me for my drug coverage, but these days he won't respond to my texts. In part because I went up to him 5-6 years ago because I had reported on the culture in Tallahassee, and I was like, "Hey, sir, tell me, can you remind me the point system you had in Tallahassee? Was it 3 points when you effed an intern, or was it 3 points when you effed your fellow state senators?" Because they had a point system that he was a part of, where interns were in the mix. Like, you disgust me, bro.
Not your favorite person, maybe not the best politician out there. What
I digress.
Right. What a difference a week makes. I mean, if we look back to, the hearing last Wednesday versus the hearing this Tuesday, and it was night and day. I mean, it really was. Excuse me. One of them felt like, we're fighting for truth, and the other one is like, let's just keep the lie going. And so you got any insights from that?
What's interesting, I'm looking through my notebook.
Well, that's why I'll give you a chance to run. I'll give everybody a heads up.
No.
45
I
minutes.
can talk while I do it, but it was amazing because the jot and tittles I took for like the House hearing, I would need a huge legal pad to get how many people were in the room. And then there was a huge line. Even after the hearing ended in the House, there were still people waiting outside. And I think, Burchett went and said sorry to all of them. They didn't get in. But the Senate one, if I remember correctly, I think there were 16 people in the audience. There was like only 3 senators, and Senator Peters, he left after 10 or so minutes. I caught him in the hall. I went out after he did, and he said, "Hey, I've got another engagement." Oh, I forgot. I interviewed him. I didn't put that in our list. Because at Askapol, we still have, I've been so busy covering the transition, but then I've also been so busy asking all these UAP caucus members and then Senate Intel members, about these meetings. I've been so busy doing the interviews, I haven't had time to post them. So right now at Askapol, we have I call it our Ask a Poll, because we're letting our subscribers, choose which ones they want. We have 5 different members from the House side: Moskowitz, Burchett, and I think Moskowitz is winning the poll, so we'll drop that after I'm done here. But then we also have another 5 to choose from outside of the Senate hearing and the classified Senate one, which is Warner, Scott Kelly, Peters, who I missed on the list, but Senator Langford, etc. And the gist of it is there was a lot of energy on the House side, and you could really kind of feel that the community, kind of whatever that is, because the community, in my mind, it also means like skeptics, but they care enough about the issue that they were there to be skeptical. Like it's America, good on you. And so that just got a ton of attention. I think because, so I'm a comms professor. I teach at Johns Hopkins and stuff. Like, if I were Gillibrand, I'd be firing my comm staff, because I think what the senator wanted, and I think why Senator Gillibrand is at the table a little bit. I know a lot of people are skeptical about her, but I think she knows that there's 2.9 million people on Reddit, UFO Reddit. And I think that's why she got engaged. I mean, she truly cares about the incursions over sensitive military sites. She did a big tour of Nevada, I think at the start of this year, where, she was meeting with contractors, I think Northrop Grumman and Lockheed, classified. Why do military contractors get classified briefings with senators? A conversation for another day, but what? Something seems wrong here. But then she was also meeting with the Air Force and stuff. So she was really pushing this issue, and kind of one of the only voices in the Senate bringing up this issue for a while. Well, then at the start of this year, we started to see cracks. Senator Tim Kaine brought up the Langely incursion and all that. And so that's why I was surprised, because she advertised the hearing initially to us at Askapol as, hey, I want to bring in the new head of AARO, have him explain to our to the community, hey, this is how we understand what this was. This is how we don't understand what these were. Well, at the end, she broadened it to also include Langely after that Wall Street Journal article came. And I was talking to one senator this week, and they were like, well, you should go talk to the Wall Street Journal reporters. I was like, no. The Wall Street Journal reporters need to come talk to Askapol. Those kids are way late on this. And so they just messed up from a comm strategy. Even if the community doesn't like, or even if the community is skeptical of you personally, let alone AARO, I think that hearing was her attempt at an olive branch. The case she was having AARO make was a case to all of you. And from the feedback we've been getting at Askapol and what I've been seeing online is
it didn't work.
Yeah, it seems like it bombed. It's interesting. Some people initially were like, oh, got a little excited, skeptics of the federal government, not of whatever. But they initially were like, oh, and so I think there's a little bit of groupthink. I think if people go back over it, so she broke news with us at the end. I went and interviewed her at the end of it, and she said either this month or more likely in December, she's dropping a bill. She's trying to get Arkansas Republican Tom Cotton to sign off with her and be an original co-sponsor. And it seems similar to an effort Jerry Moran from Kansas dropped earlier in the year. But when I mentioned Senator Kaine earlier, when he was pressing the heads of South and Northcom in a public hearing in April, I believe, March. He pressed them in March. Then Senator Kelly, he pressed the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff about incursions over Langely in April. Well, Kaine brought up the Langely incident in the public part of the hearing. And the thing he brought up to us at Askapol is he's like, the quandary we have, even though Langley Air Force Base was shut down for some 17 days because of incursions over it, that those officers, they do not still know what was above them. But Kane was pressing them on, hey, we don't know the rules of engagement for a suburban community like Langley. Well, then when Senator Kelly brought it up, he's from Arizona. Luke Air Force Base, there ain't many suburbs around there. Like, so
Right.
it kind of blows my mind. But Gillibrand, she's dropping a bill that she says she's been working with the Pentagon on that will give, American forces the authority to shoot down what's above military bases. And that's where, if you listen to the interview at Ask a Paul.
Isn't that crazy though, Matt? That shouldn't the military be doing that on their own? Why should Congress have to act to defend our airspace? I understand if it's UAP or something, it might be dangerous. But if this is simply adversarial tech, I did want to back up for a second to make sure.
Wait, but real quick on that, what's the dumb movie that I actually kind of love watching? Like White House Down or whatever. When or it might be Olympus is falling, but North Korea comes in with a huge, awesome, big gun plane that takes out the Washington Monument and everything. According to what they're saying, so that DC, I guess, is federal airspace. So then you'd have fighter jets pop up. But if that, stupid fictional huge plane coming and attacking was over, say, New York City, from what these senators think, and it seems like from what the Pentagon thinks their hands are tied when it comes to U.S. airspace, which does kind of make sense constitutionally. Our military is for overseas. They don't have authorization on U.S. soil. So, I get the angst in the community, but I'm these are actually important constitutional questions. We don't want the military marching down our streets.
Yeah,
but
that's a good point.
We also don't want things that we do not know hovering over our sensitive military and nuclear sites, which bipartisan groups of senators say has been a persistent problem, for years, I imagine, but it's been getting a lot more attention just in the past 11 months or whatever.
Right. And so, I just wanted to back up. We don't have much time, but I wanted to make sure we talked about the difference between the two hearings. Now, I didn't hear exactly who was in the first hearing. So how many senators were in the closed session?
Well, and so this is why, in our Ask a Poll, I only included one of my Warner interviews the following day after it. Because, when senators are coming out of a classified briefing, just like House members, if they're wise, like Senator Langford from Oklahoma, they just listen to what I know and say, yeah, I'm not commenting. And I'm damn it, you just got all that I know. I got nothing that you know. It's a classified briefing, and they sign away their life. They can go to jail if they divulge that stuff. Right. And so I'm still confused, and I'm curious what the community says, especially because at Ask a Poll, we have people who, work on Capitol Hill who follow us or whatever. So I just don't have it. So coming out of that classified portion, people were saying, no, it wasn't on UAPs. And
oh, wow.
I know. And then, then there was this Russian reporter or a reporter covering the Russia-Ukraine. He might be Ukrainian, but he was out there and, he asked, I let him go to Senator Warner first because I was I'm going to need some more time with this guy. Let you go first. And, he was there thinking, oh, they're probably going to bring up the ballistic, long-range missiles that Biden just okayed for Ukraine to, shoot into Russia. Well, Warner kind of was no, it wasn't on that. And I'm what the heck did you all talk about? Because, 4 or 5 of the people coming out, the senators, I would ask about it. And so that's where I think I need to retool my questions a little bit, because the next day Warner kind of sought me out in the Capitol and was hey, you were asking about this. I need to get a little more information, because Warner, he is the other Virginia senator. So Langley, that's where I led with Langley with him. And, he can't look like he's not caring for his constituents and, military and otherwise, and his assets within his state. And so I'm still confused on what exactly that hearing was, which it's a classified hearing. So like,
It seems like
good job, guys.
every time they've done it in the past, the closed hearing has to do with the open hearing. But what you're saying is you're not certain this time that's the case.
Well, so here's the other thing that's curious to me. And if anyone out there knows the answer to this, ping me. You can message me through
Right.
Ask a Poll or DM me at Matt Laslo or even the Ask a Poll handle. So that one, I think Dean Johnson put it out there. Like there's that initial announcement. Hey, there's going to be a classified UAP hearing, and then part of it's going to be open. Well, so the night before the hearing, the 18th or whatever, Senate Radio TV Gallery, they send out a list of all the hearings the next day. And that one, there was nothing on either of those on there. And people from the community were like, hey, Laslo, there's nothing online. Like, you're in the know. And I'm like, no, I'm in the know because our community sends me tips. Like, so I'm flying blind here. And so I think what actually happened was, and this is where I'm just confused, it was Senate Intelligence had the classified hearing. Well, Gillibrand, she's on the Intelligence Committee.
Armed Services too.
She's also one of only 6 senators who's also on Armed Services.
Right.
So the actual public UAP hearing, that was under her Armed Services subcommittee. And so it kind of feel like, because even when we asked the director of AARO, me and Joe Cahill from News Nation, we tried to like pepper him with we peppered him with questions as he was walking in. He didn't answer, but he made it seem like he was in there. But then talking to all the senators, they just didn't confirm that, even in ways where we weren't talking about classified content. So yeah, if anyone can like help with this confusion, but that's where I'm like a little bit in a rush to get that Warner and some of those other interviews out there, just because I'm not, and I think that's been a little bit why I've been like subconsciously slow, because I don't like publishing content I don't know.
Right. Yeah, you don't get bad information out.
But yeah, there's just confusion, because to answer your actual question, the list of senators who were in that classified hearing was very long. Langford from Oklahoma, Risch from Idaho, Heinrich from New Mexico, Kane, I think he said he was in there a little bit. Then you had Warner. I think Rubio was in there initially, Senator Cornyn, but like it ended up in Bennett from Colorado. It was 10, and Scott Kelly came at the end, missed it, but he showed up.
Yeah, but just
seems battle for a senator,
right?
And so all of those members, if you look at the Ask a Poll 100, or last year I interviewed all 100 U.S. senators on David Grush, half of those people, like Langford, Rich, and Rich even told me this week, he's like, that's not my issue. Like they don't care about the UAP issue, but there were so many of them there. I think Tom Cotton as well, that I don't know what it was. And now I'm a little like, I'm not really worried, but I'm like, wait, what's going on? Because there is a lot of senators in there, and it actually could have something to do with the just transition of power that America does every 4 years, which is like a weighty thing that when done right, the American public, the press, we don't feel the weight of it. It's supposed to be just a smooth transition. The American people have spoken, but in that process of handing over power from one administration to the next, that's when America is kind of most vulnerable. We don't have a Secretary of Defense in that interim, DHS or DNI, because they have to get confirmed. And so you have some people who sometimes stay on a little bit, you know, if they're more bipartisan or whatever, or the underlings, the deputies, they start running stuff. So again, that's when shenanigans can happen, but also that's when our adversaries are like, oh, now we can do shenanigans. So part of me kind of, I don't have this confirmed, but part of me thinks it could have something to do with that, because now the Senate, I think they're gone. And they'll be gone through Thanksgiving, then they'll come back for 2 or 3 weeks. But like that's one of the last intel briefings they're gonna have, you know, as the Senate Intel Committee. So it was interesting to me that they say Russia wasn't the focus, UAPs weren't the focus. I'm like, well, then what was?
Yeah, well, maybe
let me know.
Right. Well, maybe they were just trying to be coy and like, well, we're not really interested. But I want to kind of move on. I want to.
Maybe they were having a holiday party.
Yeah, just didn't invite you or me. I want to bring up Kosloski. You mentioned him, Kosloski. A lot of people wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I don't understand this, because this is something that just really makes the community upset. But almost immediately, he made a line that Moultrie and Bray made. He made a line that Kirkpatrick made. And it was, we're not alone in the universe. No, I'm kidding. It was
like, shoot.
You missed it here.
I missed that part.
Yeah. No, it was the same line.
Yeah.
It was the same line though. It's like there's no proof of extraterrestrial life. And it's interesting that all three of them did that. All three, there was a group of 2 at once, and then 2 directors. But that seems to be the company line. And I don't understand why they're putting that out there. What are they trying to prove by saying there's no proof of extraterrestrial life? Because the hearing would have gone better if he had not said those words. And so it feels like it doesn't matter who's in the director's spot. There's somebody with their thumb on the scale telling them what to do. I don't think he was comfortable saying that. I think he was
told.
What
was the exact line or close
just
to?
That there was no evidence of extraterrestrial is what he said.
And that's so. I'm curious, and this has come up in our perpetual hunt to find out who in the Capitol or in Washington keeps gutting Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer's UAPDA amendment in the NDAA. And I've at least each month, if not each week, for the past year, since the last NDAA wrapped up around this time, still have not been able to get confirmation on who gutted that. And talking to the chair, talking to some powerful chairs and ranking members of every committee involved, House and Senate, I've looked them in the eye and I believe them that they don't know. So this has left me so curious on who in your staffs cares about this issue. And that's where at AARO, even though we now have a new head of AARO, a new director, there might be a staffer or 2 who just they just pass the same briefing book, give the same talking points. And I can see if you're a new director coming into an agency that's new, but that's overseen by the Pentagon, which is the most intimidating, powerful, the Pentagon wipes out nations. So I could see, but again, that's why many people in the community are like, AARO should not be under the Pentagon.
That's what I wanted to get to that, because you're talking about somebody had mentioned this, and Dia Dragon mentioned that Susan Go was there. So why in the world would Susan Go be there? I mean, it's just like we talked about her in our last podcast, and I don't know if that's why you got locked out of X and I got locked out of X, if there's some weird conspiracy or not.
But did you get locked out?
Yeah.
I thought with me it was just because I was actually at least once a week on principle.
Well, I was downloading the podcast I made with you Friday night, and I got locked out, and then I found out you got locked out, and I'm going, this is the weird coincidence. But I wanted to get to some. We're really short on time. I think we have about 20 minutes left. But I thought it was very interesting that Senator Gillibrand mentioned or asked Kosloski a question, and it was, what are you going to do to reassure the whistleblowers, that, things are going to be different? And I don't know if you caught his answer or not. It was a non-answer. His only answer he had for it was, well, this is why AARO was created. And I thought it was absolutely bizarre that he couldn't give any kind of reassurance that this is a different regime, that we're going to respect whistleblowers. What's your take on that?
Well, I was going to say, to play devil's advocate, and I need to go back and re-listen to it, but in part, and this is just like implicit in what he's saying, is Congress, you created us. So like AARO is only going to ever be as good as its daddy and mommy, which is Congress, which is probably why many of you are a little bit justified in having no faith in them, because this is the least productive, like clunkiest, most ridiculous Congress in American history. And yeah, Professor Laslo can back that up. We don't have time for me to back that up. But so the one interesting thing that we did get when I the Askapol interview with Gillibrand after it, she dropped some news on us. Actually, a few nuggets. Not just that she's got that bill that she's dropping so that the military can engage over these sites.
Right. And that's important.
But the fascinating thing about that is I'm like, so we don't know what they are, but I really believe the senators themselves don't know what they are. And so that becomes like, wait, where's the dereliction of duty? Because y'all, if there's stuff hovering over American airspace that is not ours, whether it's China, Iran, another nation, like we give the Pentagon and the military about $1 trillion of our taxpayer dollars annually to protect us. And if they're just, for the past year at least, U.S. senators are like, yeah, this just is a fact that there's a steady incursion, a regular incursion of U.S. airspace, not just like, oh, in the planes, specifically over sensitive military and nuclear sites. Like, stop everything. Like, that should have been the focus of this election. Like, hey, I'm going to be the one to protect America's airspace. And like the fact that they're like dragging their feet, like this should be top priority. I digress. But the other news that Gillibrand broke to us is she said that there's actually 2 whistleblowers. They could be ones who testified in the House. They could be ones that members of Congress have engaged with. But what Gillibrand told us is that, hey, AARO has now talked to 2 credible whistleblowers. And so
that's weird, because she almost like begged for whistleblowers to come forward, and she's got 2 in her pocket. It just it's almost like I said, I just think Kosloski missed an opportunity there, is what I was pointing out.
Well, so, and because lawmakers for the past year or whatever have been saying that their offices have been proverbially, electronically knocked on from whistleblowers because those whistleblowers didn't trust AARO.
Right.
I'm kind of curious if Gillibrand or Senator Rounds from South Dakota, et cetera, I'm wondering if a whistleblower went to their office and they were like, heard them, established that trust, and then said, hey, you can trust me. I'm a U.S. Senator, the senator's office. I think AARO needs to know this. And so I could see that the whistleblowers didn't go directly to AARO, but went to AARO through Senator Gillibrand's office, maybe because she's aware of it, and others aren't. And so I wonder if that might actually break the dam. Because you just need some people in that community to start to trust AARO, or to show it's a total farce. And that's where, it's just.
There was,
nebulous and doing its
I was
own
in a
thing.
I was in a space last night with Darcy, and this very topic was brought up. And one of the reasons that they don't trust AARO is my friend OSAP Rocky provided a document where they were provided, I think, $4.3 million. The Sandcorp Consulting, which is actively anti-whistleblower. And so but the money came from the DOD, the very organization that's overseeing AARO. And so I guess my question is, why don't they get it out from underneath AARO? If AARO seems to be the common denominator, the one that everybody feels putting their thumb, Susan Go being there is definitely not good optics, for her to be in the hearing. So, if you get a chance, why don't you ask Gillibrand, why don't they take it out? I don't know if that will eliminate their access, but I'd love to know that. The other question I have for Gillibrand is I didn't hear it. They talk about no firsthand whistleblowers coming forward. Now, I know some people that have come forward that I believe are firsthand whistleblowers, like Mario Woods. I saw his invitation to AARO. I know he talked to him on the phone for over an hour or 45 minutes, whatever it was. So I know he contacted him, and he's, in my mind, he's a whistleblower, firsthand whistleblower. And so what I'd like to find out is, what is the definition of a credible firsthand whistleblower? What would determine that for them? That's a great question for her.
No, that is a great question, and I have no answer for that one. Now, your first question there, I have a mini answer. So, we have at Ask a Poll, we've asked Gillibrand and the other senators, the Intel members, about AARO specifically, and so everyone take a step back, breathe a little bit, and remember, AARO's a baby, she's still in diapers. I think it was just created 2022 or just recently, and that's where I think, even if AARO's not doing what senators intended it to do, which was a bipartisan complaint under Mr. Sean Fitzpatrick, or Kirkpatrick. God, I'm a little tired. But yeah, Kirkpatrick. And I think I've said this before on here, but I'll do it again because everyone needs to remember this. Kirkpatrick, even though he's out there doing his I'm the voice of God. This is BS. No, right before he resigned, which really ticked off our likely next Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who is Vice Chair of Senate and Intel. Oh, shoot. I've got an exclusive with Rubio. It's short and quick, but I think it's one of the last interviews he did before just not even going to the Capitol. He's got to prepare for his Secretary of State confirmation stuff. But one of the last interviews he did was with Ask a Poll. And again, not too exciting, but he still is aware of the issue and engaged on it. And but so at the end of last year, Rubio and the other chair, Mark Warner, they sat down with Kirkpatrick, classified setting, and said, "Hey, you are failing at your mandate because whistleblowers are coming to us and they don't trust you." Well, Gillibrand also sat down with Kirkpatrick, conveyed a similar message, probably a little less hard, because she seems to trust that it can be reformed. But then Senator Rounds from South Dakota, he also met with Kirkpatrick and pushed him on the same thing. And so I think everyone should be a little bit, just at ease, hey, that's 4 powerful U.S. senators who are taking time out of their insanely busy schedules to go and spank AARO, to the director's little pale-butted face. And so I think their hope is that, now that there's a new director, the change might be coming. And so even though the community is very skeptical of AARO, these lawmakers, and as Rubio told me earlier this year, because he was so annoyed that Kirkpatrick retired, he was like, Rubio was basically, to me in the interviews at Askable, but he's basically like, why are you asking me this stuff, Laslo? Like, I already outsourced this. Like, we outsourced this to AARO because we don't want to deal with it. Like, we see it as a problem, so we created AARO. Like, deal with the problem and then come back to us with information so that us as senators can act on it. And I think that's where, because AARO is so young, bipartisan senators, you know, on the House side with the Congressional UAP caucus, they're more skeptical of AARO. But at least with the senators, even though they apply pressure to it, there's still a lot more hope that it can do what they created it to do. And I think the only way that mindset will change is if they really hear from the community. You know, obviously the whistleblowers themselves, who at least last year, right after Grush, were very active in coming to Congress because I think they got a new level of trust, at least initially, you know, until Grush was like partially doxxed or whatever, you know, when his PTSD passed. And hey, I'm PTSD too, bro. PTSD proud. You know, until they tried to like dox him with that or just like shame him with that. And so we'll see. I think.
Is it possible though? Is it possible to get it out from underneath the DOD?
Oh yeah, Congress can do whatever Congress wants.
Because that seems like a good solution.
But is it practical? Or pardon me,
Is it probable?
Is it on the horizon? Something that's gonna be happening in the next near future? No. And so that's what I tell the community. The best thing you all have to work with for all of this is AARO for the time being. And one thing Gillibrand brought up a couple times in our exclusive with her after that hearing, where she was like, hey, anyone out there, look at the report, like the historical record that, you know, AARO dropped, as if it's like the Bible, you know. If you know, Gillibrand, this is her words, but she's like, if anyone out there, if you know of any program that is not in AARO's little Bible thing, she's like, let us know. I think she said, let AARO know, but you can also let her office know, because that's where Gillibrand also brought a certain level of, what is it, well-informed cynicism in the interview, which I think many people in the community kind of missed, because she was like basically begging for the community. Like she sees, and Rounds kind of see that to get the answers, the community's going to have to go around the executive branch, whether it's a Dem or an R in the White House. And so that's where you can kind of see lawmakers learning as they go, where they're like, oh, wait, even though we have AARO compiling this, we're Congress. So if people come to us, so she was like, we as the public need to compare these things. And look at that interview. Gillibrand, it's our one of our top ones from this week. She really kind of says, and she kind of admits in it, that she too doesn't trust. I think it would be more so the Pentagon, which is AARO's daddy, but she too is very skeptical of, you know, SAPs, special access programs, continuing to be hid from Congress, even though she dropped an amendment in last year's NDAA to kind of sniff that out or smoke that out. And so she's not, and I don't want to speak for her, but listen to that interview, like she's kind of begging the community, like, hey, have a little faith in me, like give me and other senators information, because that information then gives them information to go to AARO and be like, hey, someone told us this. Why isn't this in your report? Yeah.
We only have about less than 6 minutes left. I wanted to cover some things because the things you're talking about, clearly to change public's opinion, I don't think Kosloski understood that there were some of the things that he did. And one, I think he was probably ordered to do, and that's the company line. But he also, when he brought out the anomalous ones, I don't know if you noticed, but he bookended it. The idea that the first one we're on the verge of solving. There's 3 of them that were presented. And on the last one, well, we think it was actually farther away. And so what he's basically saying is it's not what they thought it was. And so it just felt funny, just the way he framed it. But the first one, I have a hard time understanding how they're on the verge of explaining. I like the ones they presented. I'll say that's the one thing I thought they did a good job of, but it almost like they set it up so that it wasn't going to be accepted. But the first one was like this large orange orb. And then after that, the next thing is this blacker than black object that gets at a 45 degree and then shoots off 10 times faster than 10 to 100 times faster than anything they'd ever seen. And it's like he said, but we think we're on the verge of solving that. And it's like, those are 2 separate issues, extraordinary issues. The second one they left alone, and that was the one with the contractors, the 2 cars full of contractors saw this spear in the sky about the size of a Prius, I believe, and it was a Prius, excuse me, and it was there 15 to 20 seconds, and it disappeared. And that's the only one they did not indicate that they might be able to solve. And then the last one was, of course, the one plane recording the other one when this object went faster than it. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, and so actually, like, I was a little bit annoyed with Apple or whatever because my phone wasn't taking good pictures. But so I was like watching those videos, and I'm like, I sat in the back of the room so that when any senator got up and left, I would leave and then go interview them in the hall. That's how we get our exclusives at Askapol.
Yeah.
And so I didn't get a ton out of those videos. I kind of need to go back and study them. But folks in our community also agree with you and did glean something from that.
So we didn't see any
something
video
positive from that. But the way you just described it there and asking, I'm so curious. So AARO, I'm curious, like, how much sharing is there with the CIA, with NSA? Because if they're, like, at a certain point, if Langley is shut down for 17 days because of incursions from these objects, like if AARO calls up, well, so even talking to Senator Kaine, and then last year talking to Senator Rick Scott from Florida, both former governors, they said that, hey, when they were governors, they would sometimes call the Pentagon or whoever that their point person in the state would be and be like, hey, there's some stuff overhead that our people don't know. Like, do we need to bring our National Guard planes up? And the Pentagon would be like, no, we got it. And that's the question is, all right, you got it? Is that yours? Is that mean you got fighter jets in the air and you're ready to engage, momentarily? Or is that military contractors, And so that was just kind of enlightening to me, being like, oh, wow, even though, in this federalist society, like, you run your state, like, that is your state. And Florida and Virginia have a lot of military bases, but the Pentagon wouldn't even let those governors know ultimately. And it didn't seem like either of them really had to press very hard. It seemed like there was just trust. Well, they were governors a while ago, in UAP time, because now so much more is out there. Or at least, let me put it this way, politicians are being forced to take this issue more seriously because their constituents are taking it more seriously, whether service members, pilots, commercial pilots, or just everyday folks. And so I think there's more awareness, where I think now if they were governor, they might have asked a couple more questions or done follow-up. And so I'm so curious, like, when AARO speaks with the voice of God, Well, are you speaking with the voice of the Pentagon God? Because the Pentagon God only sees its silo. Granted, it's a huge freaking silo, but it's not everything. And like, how much is the Pentagon, and how much do Pentagon folks communicate with Department of Energy? You know, how much access does AARO have to any DOE stuff, let alone how much access to does AARO have to U.S. contractors and their stuff? And so that's where, going back to the House hearing, that was one of the takeaways from members. Like, they've not been able to take the military industrial complex, you know, the contracting community, off of their suspicion list. And so I think it'll be interesting with next year, because like a lot of people are like, oh, this year we didn't get what we wanted, full disclosure. Guys, you had 3 public UFO hearings in 1 year with one Congress, where in 2022, Congress had its first UAP hearing in 50 frickin' years. Like, I know you want a lot more than 3. You want the select committee, which members of the House are now talking about again, kind of pushing for a select UAP committee. But that's for Congress time, and Congress at its best is a tortoise. Maybe a tortoise on a skateboard. But because we do all want Congress going slow. That's where the checks and balances do work in our favor, I think, over time. But I think you're about to see a lot of energy. And even though Askapol's been breaking all the news, and we interviewed all 100 senators on this last year, that Wall Street Journal article on Langely really did leave an imprint on a lot of lawmakers, which also makes me kind of curious if that wasn't what the classified briefing was.
The closed one, yeah.
Yeah. And then I'm kicking myself because I'm like, oh, you should have asked, like, what'd you think of the new AARO director's tie? You know, something outside of the classified.
Mean anything,
you know,
yeah.
I ask a lot of dumb questions just to like knock off, you know, oh, do away with that theory, or, oh, so he was in there and he was wearing a tie, you know? But again, it's classified, so I get the dance that they do, but I also get that the community, your community, our community at Askapol, y'all ain't standing for that dance much longer.
Yeah. Well,
which the Trump administration has heard.
Yeah, and I think there's certain people that are being in certain positions. We'll have to see if they continue down that line. But your time, unfortunately, I'm going to be your doctor for you right now. I know you need to get some sleep, but I'm going to go ahead and cut you off for your own good, because I know you need to get some rest. Yeah. But anyway, Matt, just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being on the podcast, and we'll just have to see when the next hearing is. And like you said, it's hard. The community is very impatient. And I understand that, you know, there's 2 sides of it. There's the short version and then the long version, and everybody wants the short version, but you know, we've been trying to get there for 77 years. So hopefully we will get there. Hopefully it'll be sooner than later. And hopefully, like you said, we had 3 hearings within a year, and we're just building momentum.
One last thing. It's going to be interesting because the hearing this week that was chaired by Senator Gillibrand. She's in the majority. She's a Democrat. Democrats are about to be in the minority. And I don't know who is going to be. Yeah, there's not a natural Republican senator that stands out to me. Let me know, community. Pin me at Askapol, whatever. But I'm curious. See, now my alarm's going off. Thanks, Dad. But I'm curious who, if anyone, is going to take over that mantle and that mission in the U.S. Senate. In the House, it's broadly bipartisan, and even though every seat in the huge oversight hearing wasn't filled, that was just one subcommittee doing that hearing, but there were some power players there. And even at one point, I saw the chair of the Oversight Committee, James Comer, he peeked his head out of the back. So he was there, probably listening to it, but he wasn't out there asking questions. In part because, as he told us after the Grush hearing, he's like, I was there to learn. He's like, this isn't my issue. So like, as other people are asking their questions, he's like, I'm just gleaning stuff. And so that'll be the interesting thing. The other interesting thing about the new Congress, the 119th, which will start in January, is former House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff. What is it? Shifty Schiff, who President Trump promised to lock up along with Pelosi in the waning days of the campaign. Well, he's now going to be California Senator. And right before we lost her, R.I.P., Miss Dianne Feinstein, I asked Senator Feinstein about UAPs, and she had lost her mind, like my grandpa, to dementia or something at the end. But I still was interviewing all 100 senators, and she was a senator, even if weekend at Bernie's Bernadette's version of it at the end. But she was like, this has never come up. Throughout Senator Feinstein's like 40, 50-year-long career as a California senator, where a ton of these sightings have been, I don't think she'd ever been asked about it, at least on the record from a reporter. And so it's a new day. Schiff and all the other newbies, they come in like just way at the bottom. And a smart senator doesn't do what Schiff did in the House, at least initially. Like if he's on CNN every night, if he's well then, hey, your colleagues in the Senate aren't going to talk to you. You know, like, no, you're supposed to shut up and listen. And that's how you kind of gain your stature in the Senate. And especially because he's a Dem from California. Well, Adam Schiff just got his cushy retirement. And so even though a lot of people will be disappointed in him probably in the first year or so, watch out. Because he's likely going to be a lifer, that means and because he's such a power player for the Democratic Party, he's going to quickly move up the ranks. If y'all keep this issue on his radar, and last time I talked to him, it's fully on his radar, he just hasn't been able to get a seat at the table because under former Speaker McCarthy, they kicked him, the former chair of the Intel Committee, they kicked him and Eric Swalwell off of it. And so he was like, I don't know. He's like, I care about the issue. I'm just not on the House Intel Committee. So this issue, along with a lot of others, are no longer fun, if you're not the chair. So we'll see. There's going to be new dynamics. Yeah.
Schumer's not there anymore, or what's up with him? I mean, I know he's there, but he's not involved.
He'll be the minority leader. And actually, this is kind of my one and only prediction for the new year, but we already saw it happen this year. Like last year, it was Schumer's UAPDA. This year, it was Senator Rounds. And so Senator Rounds, he was an original co-sponsor along with, 4 or 5 others. Well, those 4 or 5 others were just meant as cover. Like in talking with Young and Rubio, they're like, no, that was Schumer and Rounds. But they just asked us, our offices looked at it, and we signed on. Because I think they wanted to show, like, look, 6 bipartisan senators, like, take this seriously. Well, so then the calculation changed, which I think because it was an election year, I think Schumer, and I don't have this confirmed, just like a little hunch, maybe the Schumer UAPDA amendment was targeted in the last one. And Schumer and his team were like, hey, let's just take Schumer's name off it and see if that works. He's still a co-sponsor, but the lead sponsor this time is Senator Rounds. And so, like, there's stupid political BS like that happens. But so it'll be interesting because Rounds, he's widely respected, former governor. Like, he's just a serious man who also has a great sense of humor and loves talking to the press. So keep your questions coming. Senator Rounds will be engaged. I don't know if he'll be a chair of any subcommittees or committees where this falls under their portfolio, but losing Rubio, like look at our list of 100 senators from the 118th Congress from last year, but this 2023 and 2024 is still the 118th Congress. It's depressingly few of those senators were engaged on this. This year we did see a change, and I know the community doesn't like it. A lot of these senators are saying there's drones overhead, there's drones overhead. Guys, don't care. Like, don't suss out and like I studied, hermeneutics and all that. Like, don't get too caught up on the words. If they call it a drone, then they shoot it down and they're like, what the F is that?
What's coming out of that?
Yeah, like, oh, some eyes might be open. So that's where I use anyone else's terminology, but knowing that there's a bipartisan push about these regular incursions over U.S. airspace, and love or hate the guy, someone gets in Trump's ear and says, hey, some other nation's hovering over U.S. airspace, you might see some stuff start flying, for better and for worse.
Well, thank you, Matt.
A lot of questions on the horizon.
Wow.
Anyone who tells you they have answers in Washington is a liar.
Just more questions than anything else, right?
Yes,
anyway, well, thank you, Matt. I want to tell you how much I appreciate being on. I know you need to go, and someone's got to protect you from yourself, probably, right? But
you and my pup.
Yeah. Oh, your
pup.
pup.
I like that you
got to
cut
have
me
some
off.
time too, right?
You cut me off 5 minutes earlier than my alarm.
Well, I was looking at my live clock is what I was looking at. I wasn't trying to cut you off. I was trying to protect you.
Stay tuned at Ask a Poll, because in the next hour or two, we're going to be dropping the latest Warner interview, and hopefully maybe Moskowitz from after the House hearing, because I feel so bad that we should have dropped those interviews like day of, but we're a small little startup at Ask a Poll, and we're getting by. But even the holiday week, there's going to be probably a new interview a day from after these 2 UAP hearings, which I know frustrate many of you out there in the community, but guys, take your wins when you get them, and then keep fighting for that next one.
Well, the energy from one was completely different than the energy from the other. That was part of it. Do you want to go ahead and announce, just promote some of your Ask a Poll things real quick, the different groups you've started, so that maybe help people be interested in it?
And so, there's actually an alt weekly buddies of mine down in Nashville who asked me to do an op-ed that I just finished last night on Ask a Poll, and I call it our audience. I call us all the unnewsed. The
unnews.
The Washington politicians. They're yelling past each other, trying to fundraise off, this fear and that fear, ... Well, especially with this community, before Ask a Poll was here, how often would you guys get reaction or get a story devoted to you all? We still have a lot to learn from you and long ways to go, but now we're here, we're pushing them. The unnewsed, I also call that, my friends in crypto. And it seems like that's about to change, but cannabis, all that. No one's covering these issues, even though polls show it's like what? Cannabis is supported by 68% of the American public just steadily. In Mitch McConnell's deep red Kentucky, I think it was like 68% of Republicans supported it. So it's become this non-issue for the nation. The Senate's never voted on, a bill to allow locally legal cannabis companies to not be all cash companies. Right now the cannabis industry is an all cash industry. You have armored cars and big long gun toting, mercenaries protecting the millions and billions of dollars. There better not be any thieves listening, because I don't put this in my stories for Playboy, Rolling Stone, and all that. because it is such a danger. But even though the House has passed this bill to allow cannabis companies to simply use banks and not be all cash, the bill's never been voted on in the U.S. Senate. That's why this year I interviewed all 100 senators on cannabis. They've never voted on it. Guess what? I'm the only person, and we're going to drop the last 30 interviews, with the last one dropping New Year's Eve this year. And then I've already interviewed some of the incoming senators, so we'll start right into the new year. But because the Senate doesn't do their job and vote, they grandstand, they sell fear, and they get y'all to donate a little here, donate a little there.
Exactly right.
But they're not talking about what matters to you. And so that's where, and they're not doing their job. So that's where last year I interviewed them all on UAPs. This year it was cannabis. Next year it'll be artificial intelligence. I'm a Wired magazine contributor, so I think I've already interviewed 50 to 70 lawmakers on AI just to kind of inform them, like, hey, this is coming. And so, yeah, that's where we want to be the community for the unnewsed. Send us, like, ask a poll. It's ask a politician. I take your questions and I go and ask them to your lawmakers, and then we put the raw interview out and transcript out. And I think I also did this. I'm a media professor. Like, the scariest poll is a Gallup one. Gallup and Knight Foundation that shows 2022 poll that shows 50% of the American people don't just think us in the media are fake news. Half the American people thinks we're actively lying to them. And that's why last summer I launched Ask a Poll, because I was like, wait, I've been here 18 years, I've won awards, blah, blah, blah. I'm a gatekeeper. Many Americans see me as a gatekeeper, media elite. Well, no one sees me as a media elite. Playboy, Rolling Stone, the fun ones. But that's where I was like, wait, with Ask a Poll, the intention, like, overall is to bring you all into your U.S. Capitol with you to show you, hey, it's messed up. And it's likely more messed up than you thought, but likely in different ways. And I think a big way is that lawmakers don't read. Like, they're not engaged with the same news that you're consuming. And we're trying, that's where I call Ask a Poll your conduit to Congress. We're trying to start that dialogue. And it pains me to say, I like shutting me the F up and just letting your questions come through my mouth and then letting you hear what your lawmakers have to say. And then whether you give them hell or give them a trophy after, que sera, sera.
You're cutting out the middleman, though, because you're bypassing the staffers, and you're able to talk to the senators and congressmen firsthand, and you can put the questions to them that never get to them because the staffers don't allow them to get there. And so I just want to tell you, Matt, how much the community appreciates you. I hear a lot of people talk about you, and you're right at the top as far as reporters that we have that we believe in. And I know I consider you a friend and a valuable friend at that. And I appreciate what you do. Appreciate Ask a Poll. I wasn't trying to cut you off. I was trying to protect my buddy. I keep you on for 2 hours if it wasn't a matter.
I know that was fun last time. Yeah. But hey, my hope and prayer for the new year is that you all, this community, gets 2, 3, 5, 10 more reporters. Like, I would love competition in this space. But there's no competition, which is why I'm able to sit on these 10 interviews that you in the community should have had last week and then, a couple of days ago after that hearing. So if any of you are inclined, please think of supporting us at Ask a Poll, because that money's going to go into you getting our news quicker, and my intern's pocket and maybe my puppy's mouth.
There you go. Got to have some puppy food.
Right.
Anyway, you take care, Matt. Sure appreciate being on the podcast, and hopefully I'll talk to you before the new year. If not, have a happy new year. Have a Merry Christmas.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I was going to say Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I guess we haven't even gotten that far yet, have we? I don't know.
Guys, rant. stop with all the sales in November and all the Christmas music and Christmas movies. No.
They're
Christmas is so
bypassing Thanksgiving.
precious. That's December. I'm excited about Thanksgiving.
All right. Well, we'll let you go anyway. To everyone else, I just want to say, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, let you know how much I appreciate it. A wonderful guest like Matt on. And so anyway, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Everyone have a wonderful day. Thank you.